Hey, welcome. My name is Jeff White, and I am a coach with Kingdom Factor. And Kingdom Factor is a ministry all about marketplace ministry. What does it look like to be a Christian business owner and make an impact on the world? And how does your faith collide with that? And so today I get to interview Lenny. And Lenny, glad you're here. Thanks for joining me.
Great to be
And
here.
yeah, so glad that you could make time in your busy schedule because I know you're up to a lot of things in the world. And so um, yeah, so I would love to just hear from you, like your journey to get here, right? You started in something different than apologetics, more like marketing, but maybe you can just tell us your journey. How did you get to do
Well,
what
well,
you're
they
doing?
actually, yeah, they actually coincided a little bit. So
Hmm.
it was the mid '90s, and there's this new thing that everybody was starting to talk about called the internet. It was very, very young. I taught people it was back in the gray page days of Netscape 2.0,
Yeah,
right? When everything was on a gray background.
yeah.
And matter of fact, we would use BBS's bulletin board systems to call into local exchanges and things
Mhm.
like that. Anyway, the World Wide Web was in its infancy, and I was
Mhm.
really intrigued by that. I thought that that would be an interesting thing to learn how to
Mhm.
kind of build web pages. At the same time, I wanted to do a Bible study. I wanted to do something that really took the Bible to a deeper level, something more than a surface read. And so what I did was I put those things together. I found on a BBS in a BBS forum there were these two guys talking back and forth. And again, this is you got to remember this is like a monitor with just green type on it, right? It's
Yeah.
war games days, that kind of thing. You're dialing into all this stuff with a 14.4 baud modem, tying up your phone line, and the atheist and the Christian were talking to each other. And so I picked up
Mhm.
the atheist's letter and I answered him point by point, called it Answering an Atheist, said, well, that'll be a good way to start off,
Mhm.
a website. And then when people want to discuss it or talk more, have another question, they would write in and I would post another page. And so I learned that all together. And because of that, um, at the same time, I wasn't doing ministry full time. What I was able to do then was to uh, work with an organization who was interested in marketing, but they needed someone to kind of translate the technical side. They were going to be working with the
Mhm.
American Bible Society on a brand new site called forministry.com. This was about 1999. It's a few years later. And they needed someone who would understand marketing. They would also understand ministry, and then they would also understand the technical sides. So that's what I started doing. So I was doing
Mhm.
ministry, and then in my tent making kind of a position, I was working for a marketing organization, direct marketing organization, and those kind of concepts grew up at the
Mhm.
same time for me. And now what's happened is after many years, I've wanted to put my efforts more full time into ministry. And so that's what I'm doing now.
Okay. Yeah. And so your ministry is called Come Reason Ministries, correct?
Yeah, it's based
Yep.
off of Isaiah 118. Come, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins be as
Mhm.
scarlet, they'll be white as snow. So that's a kind of our pivotal verse that we use.
Yeah. Love that. If you had to tell somebody like what your ministry does, what's the mission statement? How would you describe that to someone?
Well, what we do is we seek to show convincing Christianity to a lost world, and basically we do it
Mm.
by three ways. We in we educate the church, so we come to Christians, we show them why their faith is a rational faith, why their faith holds intellectual rigor, that you're standing on the shoulders of giants. So we educate the church on the issues of the day, be it cultural issues, philosophy, theology, ethics, things like that. So we educate the church, we engage the culture at large. We do this through our social media outreaches and other events, writings and things of that nature. And then we embolden and equip students specifically. So we'll take younger kids, of course, we'll have the Dare to Defend conferences that they can attend and equip themselves. But we'll also do things like apologetics missions, where I'll take a group of students up to Berkeley, California, and we'll go on campus at UC Berkeley and we'll
Mm.
train kids how to engage with folks who don't believe like they do. Or we'll take a group to Salt Lake City and we'll go to Temple Square. I even took a
Wow.
group to Dearborn, Michigan, which has the highest Muslim population, largest mosque in North America, and we
Mhm.
did that as well. So these are the things that we do to help, again, educate the church, engage the
Mhm.
culture, and equip and embolden students to really support their faith through the college years and beyond.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. The structure of your ministry, are you tied to a church? Is it independent? Do you have a bunch of employees? Like, give me a little more, tell us a little bit more about like the structure. Yeah.
Sure. So I have a board. The church it's a parachurch ministry.
Okay.
Technically, it's not
Yeah.
under a denomination. Although I am accountable to my local church body, and I do as a pastor. I actually have a church in Riverside here that I'm one of the teaching pastors. That we have a different kind of a model. We have no senior pastor at our church. We actually have
Mm.
three pastors who rotate through and take turns teaching in order to help equip the saints. And the goal is that it's to focus on the saints. So the church family fellowship is where I'm anchored at the church right now.
Great.
But yeah, the ministry kind of sits beside that. Although I'm personally accountable, the ministry isn't necessarily a outreach of the church. It was formed prior to the church. Matter of fact, the church is actually fairly new, so the ministry predates the church. But yeah, it's mostly it's almost a missionary effort, really.
Mm.
What we're doing it now,
Mhm.
especially these days, is we're reaching out to the folks here in this country who are just so confused.
Well,
As you know, things are getting
mhm.
more and more gray. Things are getting less and less clear. There's a missing understanding of basic what makes morality obligatory. The
Mm.
idea that a Christian ethos in our culture has faded away. We live
Sure.
in what I call a post-Christian pagan culture. So we need people to come in and help re-engage the broader society and
Mm.
understand not only why we believe what we believe, but how Christian beliefs are actually the foundation of Western civilization, and why, when you remove those, what you're doing is you're actually um, really creating a recipe for danger down the road.
So it sounds like a couple things that I'm hearing. First of all, education is a lot of what you do. You're educating the church, you're educating people, you're educating students, but then you're inviting them to go act on that by going out, right?
Yeah.
And challenging how to share their faith, how to defend. And so there's a lot of education there. It also sounds like you're colliding a lot more history with the Bible and like more than some people do, right? Some people just look at the Bible, but are you taking history next to the Bible with the Bible and telling the story differently than other people?
Well, sometimes so most Christians today fall into one of two camps. They are either you know um, basically, I know Jesus lives in my heart, and that's good enough for me. And they tend to either try and evangelize people based on their testimony, which is absolutely appropriate, or they withdraw into their holy huddles and they say, those guys out there and we are the church over here. And that's a
Mhm.
shame because they don't realize that really we're giving away too much when we do that. C.S. Lewis says that good philosophy must exist because bad philosophy needs to be answered. And what we
Mhm.
have in our
Wow.
society today is bad philosophy. And we don't talk about the life of the mind in the
Mhm.
Christian walk. But really, the life of the mind is as much a spiritual discipline as our emotional devotion to the Lord.
Mhm.
So when we do our
Yeah.
devotions, when we do our worship, we tend to think of it as feeling-centered, not thought-centered. But Romans 12:2 tells us that it is the renewing of our mind that is our
Mhm.
spiritual act of worship and our spiritual
Yeah.
service. And it's that idea that we see as, well, there seems to be a lot missing here. So, I mean, I'm a musician. I've been on worship teams for many, many years. And I love music, and I love to play it, music and worship. And a lot of people, that's how they understand worship, and that's how they relate to God. And that's fine.
Mhm.
But that's only part of the story. You can
Yeah.
be almost more satisfied in your understanding of God intellectually as you would emotionally. And matter of fact,
Mhm.
they reinforce each other. I'll give you an example. Imagine someone who's been shipped off to war, and he leaves his, fiance behind at home, right? And they write letters to each other and things of this nature. And when the fiance gets those letters from this guy who's maybe posted out on the front, uh, she treasures those letters. She reads them over and
Mhm.
over again. She studies them to understand just how he's feeling, to learn his words, to see those things that are important to him. Tell me more about this. Tell me more about your history. Tell me more about yourself.
Mhm.
Why do women do this? Why do they want to know all these? Because it draws them closer to the person, gives them a better, more full picture of who that individual
Mhm.
is. But we
State.
don't necessarily do that with God so much. We don't
Yeah.
we don't say he's given us this great love letter in the Bible, and we don't
Mhm.
pour over it and gnaw on the marrow of the word, that we can just drink it all in and understand the nuances. And I
Love it.
think that's something that would build a deeper faith in us, and
Mhm.
we have a greater appreciation emotionally when we understand these ideas intellectually, just like the fiance has a greater appreciation emotionally for what the soldier is going through, even though she's
Yeah.
learning of it intellectually.
Love that. I love that example too, and it does. It's like, "Oh, yeah, I would read those letters over and over. Well, God's given us all these letters. Why don't I read it over and over?" So, great example. I love that. Thanks for sharing that. I wanna switch gears a little bit to, like, um, in your journey of this ministry, which is a Christian business, it's a ministry, um, what are some challenges that you have had or are having today? Like, what are some challenges as a Christian business owner or somebody who's running this nonprofit? Like, what are some challenges you have?
Well, you can look at it from two distinct ways. One may be the unique selling proposition, if you will. Uh, in Christian ministry, a lot of people understand, feeding the homeless, helping out children. These are easy, what you call asks, when
Mhm.
you're raising funds for a ministry, because that's how you receive your income, is right. Yeah, I'm a missionary, and so basically I have to raise my support myself. But when you talk about apologetics, first of all, you get these preconceptions of, oh, apologetics, that's that head stuff, or that's just arguing,
Mhm.
that's for those guys over there. That really doesn't have any
Mhm.
practical implications for me, right?
Mhm.
And so there's a bias that a lot of people have, that thinks that it's because it's a little abstract, it's irrelevant.
Mhm.
And that's first of all, that's a misconstrued bias. So I always tell the story about when my third son was born. He came early, and it turned into a crisis pregnancy. We had no idea that my
Wow.
wife was in crisis, but we drove her to the hospital, and I thought she was having back labor. Turns out her liver was shutting down. Her blood pressure was through the roof. Basically, she had a condition called HELP syndrome, which is hemolysis, enlarged liver, and low platelets. And the hemolysis means that you're not making hemoglobin anymore. So imagine her stats were, your hemoglobin count should be somewhere between 12 and 16 for an average healthy woman that carries the oxygen to the cells. And They consider anything below 6, life-threatening. She was at like 4.2. 3/4 of her blood was basically water, and it wasn't carrying any.
Wow.
So like I said, her blood pressure was 195. It was a whole thing. The doctor said, okay, I have to get this baby out right now. And I have to make an incision, but the problem is she's not clotting. So I have to open her up and do major surgery, and we don't know if her blood will clot or not.
Wow.
Okay, so look, I'm praying, right? I'm sitting there in a darkened, what should have been the delivery room. They wheeled her into surgery. So I'm just sitting there all alone, looking around going, what happened? What just happened? What, God, why did this happen this way? Right. And it's kind of like what I call the Job cascade. If I'm in the book of Job right now in my devotions, and the Job cascade is like things get bad, and you pray, and then they get worse, right? Chapter 1, things are awful, and Job does nothing wrong, and then they get worse. And it's at that time most Christians start to say, is this real? Is this true? Maybe the atheists are right. Maybe my prayers are only bouncing off the ceiling. And this is when most people start to question their faith. And let me tell you, that's the worst time to start asking these questions, because you're just emotionally wrought, right? You're a wreck.
Yeah.
You can't think clearly. Yeah. You're just too worried. So I'm sitting there praying, and I said, well, I know 2 things. Number one, I know that God exists. I've read the best atheist arguments. I've studied their objections, and I know none of them hold water. I know that our answers are better. Yeah. And I know Jesus rose from the dead. I know this is a fact of history. I've looked into it. I've dug into it. So even though right now I have no answers to some of these questions, I can rely upon those 2 things, because when I wasn't emotionally racked, I studied them and I looked at them. And this is what apologetics can do for us. So people don't understand that. People don't see that apologetics is actually a ministry that can be encouraging, gratifying, self-building. But you have to unpack that for them, right? It's not just head knowledge and it's not, I hate studying in school. Why would I want to study now? That kind of thing. So that's the first thing. And then the other one tends to happen from the other side. A lot of times pastors will be really shy about starting an apologetics ministry for their churches. It makes them a little bit nervous. Sometimes they think that it's like, oh, he's going to start questioning me on all my stuff, right? I tell people, you going to a pastor to tell him you want to start an apologetics ministry, it's kind of like a man going up to his Jewish mother and telling her he wants to be a proctologist. It's like, well, it's nice you want to be a doctor, but why did you choose that?
Right.
Can't you do something normal?
Something easier. Yeah.
So, but actually what it does is it takes the pressure off of the pastor, because, you've got so much on your plate. How in the world are you going to stay up on the latest laws concerning LGBTQ or the latest studies that debunk, the evolutionists are throwing at? How are you going to, let me take those off your plate. Let me answer some of the questions that you get from the congregation. So it actually can be freeing for the pastor. But again, you have to be able to communicate those ideas, because the misconceptions, and this is true for a lot of businesses, people have just misconceptions about what their business does or how in ways their business can be helpful that maybe hadn't been thought about prior. And having a good way of explaining it, I think, is an important step.
Yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. As you've run this ministry for years, I'm sure there's some ups and downs along the way. What are some guiding principles? What are some leadership principles that you've either grown in, learned, still want to learn? Like, what are some, as you look back, let's just look back. As you look back, what are some guiding principles and biblical principles, leadership principles that you kind of held on to as you've been in this a long time?
Well, yeah, I think first of all, keep your core mission. Don't forget that. In-N-Out has always surprised people, right? I drive anytime I drive by an In-N-Out, I go, man, what a terrible business model. Look at those cars lined up, right? They've only got hamburgers, cheeseburgers, fries, and a drink.
Right.
They could have chicken nuggets, they could have tacos, but they don't. But
Right.
they keep the main thing the main thing. So that's an important thing, because in ministry as well as in business, you have, economic upheavals. You have times where finances get tight. You have to start thinking about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Of course, you understand that what you're doing is serving God. But I think that's true in business as well. I think in business, you as a leader have a ministry to your employees, because they represent families, and those families are relying upon that paycheck in order to sustain them. And you have a ministry to your consumer base, right? If you're a S corporation, you have a fiduciary responsibility to your stockholders. All of these things are still ministerial in their approach, and that's something that I think that we need to hold on to. The second thing, though, is to make sure you understand fully just what it is and don't narrow yourself off too much. So the favorite story that I always tell is the one where Alexander Graham Bell invents the telephone. And what did Bell do? He looked around and said, well, I need to, capitalize on this. I'm going to go to the biggest guy that I know who does this kind of thing. I'm going to go to Western Telegraph. And so he goes to Western Telegraph and he shows them the phone, and they're sitting there like, okay, that's nice. But, we're Western Union. We don't need this toy. We've got telegraph stations all over the United States. So they wouldn't pick up on it. So he had to look for a smaller outfit. There was a New England company called American Telegraph that it was intrigued by it and said, well, we could, the New England seaboard's pretty close together. We could probably set this up. So American Telegraph became American Telephone and Telegraph, AT&T.
AT&T.
And where's Western Union today versus AT&T? Yeah. See, because American Telegraph understood it wasn't the telegraph business that they were in. It was the communication business. Right. And so if Sears, for example, would have understood that what they were doing was giving consumers a shopping experience from the convenience of their home, which that's how they built their entire industry, was on the Sears catalogs. But when the internet came along, they missed it. Why did they miss it? They forgot who they were, and they thought what they were was a retail store. And so you have to understand who you are. You don't want to stray past it. You don't want to get into too many things, but at the same time, understand exactly what that market is, and don't cut yourself too short. Don't be too tunnel visioned either.
Yeah. No, I love that. And has your core for your ministry, has it been the same the whole time?
Yeah, pretty much. Although the questions have changed, and the emphasis has changed. The idea of helping people make sense of the objections or the societal resistance to the Christian worldview is always the same. For example, I have these Dare to Defend conferences, and for many years they were very much classic apologetics that you would hear. Okay, Richard Dawkins says this. How do I talk to my friends about evolution? Why is the Bible true? What about contradictions? These were the kinds of questions that I would hear over and over again. When I have conferences today, that's not the questions that people bring me to. Just a couple of years ago, I had a woman come up to the microphone in our Q&A time, and she says, I've homeschooled my kids by their entire lives. I raised them in the Christian home. My daughter's 14 now, and she just came up to me and told me her best friend is trans. Now, I know how contagious this can be. What do I do? Do I cut her off from her best friend? How do I handle this? These are the questions that people are asking now. And these are the areas where the church desperately needs to be helped. So again, if you don't have the understanding of the broader context of what's going on in that culture and why rapid onset, gender dysphoria is happening specifically amongst girls, why this can be contagious, and what does it mean with a relationship with a daughter and a mother and friends with, if you have to, again, be able to manage these things. But all of a sudden, apologetics in that regard, cultural apologetics, has become a whole lot more relevant. And that's so that's what we're seeing. But it's pretty much been what I've been focused on. Again, our tagline is convincing Christianity. We want to give you an idea of Christianity that goes beyond not simply what I believe because it's my faith, but because it is a rational faith. It's something that has an objective value to it that can help in society.
So cultural apologetics, it sounds like for you to do well in this, you would have to pay attention to culture and know the Bible. Right?
Yeah, and even not merely pay attention to culture, but kind of dig a little deeper to understand
so
where
how do you
these
do
things
that?
came from, what's motivating them, I did, for example, last year, 2024, when I did the conference, I did a session called Language Games of the Woke, and how they play with language in order to try and sell their point, get their point across. Basically, a lot of people in the quote unquote culture wars, they cheat by using loaded language. They use tactics of really propaganda in order to make things happen. And then Christians don't. For example, gender. Here's a great example. Okay, people who I hear the argument back and forth. What gender are you? There are only two genders, and I say no, that's wrong. There aren't two. There are only two sexes. People are sexed. They're not gendered. Genders reflect certain stereotypes or predilections or commonalities that you would see. But people aren't gendered. People are sexed. And so that's an example. Or the Black Lives Matter issue. I don't know when you remember in the summer when they started saying, are you going to say Black Lives Matter? Are you going to say Black Lives? And the counter from the right was, well, all lives matter. Right. And I said, okay, now stop. Hold on a minute. Here's what you're doing. You don't understand what you're doing. What you're doing is you're playing their game for them. So, look, I understand a Christian that doesn't want to tie himself to Black Lives Matter because that phrase carries a political connotation as well. Matter of fact, there was an actual Black Lives Matter organization. They had certain political standards and things of that nature. I said, but a lot of people in the street don't understand that. Imagine you're coming up to a friend and his wife, and how's it going? Tell them, it's been really rough. My wife's been, diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and we're really worried. We're trying some treatments, and it's been really tough, man. Let me tell you, breast cancer really sucks. And you were to come back to him and say, well, all cancer sucks. How would he receive that?
Yep.
So what I say is, what you want to do is you don't want to agree with them and say, but you also don't want to necessarily play the game. So I say, when people would have asked me, will you say Black Lives Matter? I say, I'll go farther than that. I'll say that Black lives have inestimable worth, that they're created by God and are intrinsically valuable. Now, what have I done there? I've done three things. I've not engaged in their political ideology. I've not countered them and offended them. I've extended, right? Who's gonna say, you can't say Black lives have inestimable worth? That's offensive. Nobody's gonna. But I've also now started a spiritual conversation because I said they have intrinsic value given by God. So I've pulled the whole thing into a whole different direction, and this is some of the things that we can do. So these are the kinds of things, again, if you think about it, and this is why the church needs help, because people aren't nobody's talking about this stuff, right? This year I did a whole thing on AI and what does that mean and where the dangers are and stuff like that. So and all of that stuff, if you want to buy the conferences that are all on the comereason.org website, you can do that. But the idea is to really think through what
Mhm.
you're hearing today and maybe pick up on some aspects of this that you hadn't even thought about before.
Yeah. Yeah. Big picture. This is a phrase that I heard growing up from my dad a lot, that he would say this and tell me what your response is to what you're doing. So methods are many, principles are few. Methods often change, principles never do. So I think
Yeah,
about your ministry and I think about all the years, like your principles haven't changed, but your methods have had to change, right?
yeah, well, though, especially in the way that we engage and discuss with others, because
Totally.
language changes, words changes, and the situation changes as to how people
Yeah.
understand one another.
Yeah.
Um, but the idea of engaging folks, questioning, that's and of course the internet makes everything different,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
attention spans keep getting shorter and shorter. So that's definitely methods have to change. We're doing a whole lot more YouTube shorts and
Right.
TikToks and all that fun stuff that's out there, Instagram Reels, right? All
Yeah.
those,
Yeah.
just to at least bait people into saying, "Hey, here's a minute, here's 90 seconds of this. Go watch the whole thing. Don't, you know."
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of thinking through these things, of loving God with your mind as well as
Yeah.
your heart, soul, and strength. Absolutely, those are
That's good.
that is the principle that
Yeah.
we try to hold.
What are some current challenges you're dealing with right now that you would want to share with us?
Well, again, uh, who knows what's going to happen in the economic environment in which we find ourselves. So
Yeah.
we've been having to double down on some of our fundraising efforts. That's been really difficult.
Yep.
But and then just trying to, because of that, having to kind of pare back some of our products, or our ministry output is had to slow a little bit as I've had to kind of do more different tasks and can't outsource some of this stuff to folks as I would prefer. So you find yourself doing a lot more stuff yourself, find yourself doing a lot more stuff in house, which is always a bit of a challenge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Praise God that I've been able to at least keep like our weekly podcast comes out every Monday at 10 a.m. That continues, and all of these kinds of things. The plates keep spinning, and then
Yep.
broader exposure. So
Mhm.
advertising issues that we can get other churches and other Christians across the country to know what's going on.
Yeah.
Those take a little bit of a hit as well, but that's basically, on one hand, you're more in demand than ever because people are desperate to understand these things. On the other
Mhm.
hand, you're one of the best kept secrets because they don't know where to find you. So,
Right.
so
Right.
it tends to be that kind of a balancing act.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Um, what would you tell somebody in a nonprofit space like yours, or somebody who wants to get into that, somebody who's younger and is like, man, I'm passionate about nonprofit work. What are a couple things you would tell them as far as like leadership principles, biblical principles? Again, you might have mentioned them already, but what would you tell somebody who's just getting started or younger, as somebody who's been in it for a while? What advice would you give them?
Well, I think you need to find good people who can help
Love.
you, both in terms of lining up at least a good core of supporters who share your vision, who will carry you through. And I get a lot of encouragement from a good group of core supporters who, when you feel down, because it's tough out there for anybody,
Yeah.
and when you feel down, they tell you how much that the work means to them. That helps quite a bit.
Yeah.
Also, understand what you should be doing
Mm.
as the leader in setting the tone, in setting the vision, in charting the course. I often think back to the Apple when Apple dismissed Steve Jobs back in the late '80s, right?
Yeah.
And they did okay for a while. They coasted for a while, and then they started
Mhm.
to falter. And it wasn't until they were at their lowest point ever that they have brought him back. And when he comes back with the iPhone, now he's not the guy building it,
No.
He's got a good group of people around him, but he understands where we're going, what we're
Yeah.
doing, and why.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of a vision casting that can
Mhm.
only be done by a person who's leading, and
That's good.
that's what makes the whole thing work. You take that guy out, and the company falters, just like we
Mhm.
again saw with Apple. We put him back in, all of a sudden now you have the iPhone, the iPad, iPod, right? They explode. They become the biggest company in the world almost.
Right.
So uh, sometimes you can be tempted to do everything yourself
Mm.
because you want it just so. And sometimes perfection is the enemy of the good.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to just get it out there and do the
Yeah.
work. Second thing I would say is, make sure you're scheduling your time, you're budgeting your time well. If you
Mhm.
can lay out your day so that you know that, here's what I do from this to this, um, do my deep thinking in the mornings
Mhm.
or my writing or my vision casting, whatever you're doing. I take a short break. I'll answer some emails before lunch, right? In the afternoon, I'll deal with administrivia or kind of thing. Do another set of emails just before 5. And, budget your time, budget your day.
Good.
And when you do that, then what you can do is always kind of understand where you're at, and you'll
Mhm.
always have time for some of these things. And then you can
That's great.
plan. One of the things that I've always done also is plan each day. So Mondays is more based on content development. Tuesdays is based on, say, fundraising. Wednesdays is based on maybe social media, online representation, uh, presentation, promotion, things like that.
Yeah.
So each day has kind of a theme to it as well. And again, it helps you structure your week so that nothing gets completely neglected, because sometimes, again, the
Great.
immediate is the enemy of the important, and
Yeah.
we never get to
Yeah.
the important because we got all these fires that we're trying to put out.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, especially as a leader, right? If you don't have control of your calendar, it'll get eaten up by other
Yeah.
things and like you said, all these urgent things. One of the things that I get to do as a Kingdom Factor coach is to bring people together once a month in a group. It's marketplace ministry for accountability and prayer, leadership development, training, all of those things. And so um, I'm just excited to have interviewed you today. I'm excited for like what you're doing in the world. And if people want to like see what you're doing or connect with you, where would they find you? What's the easiest way?
Well, the first way is the website, comereason.org. So that's kind of the home base that you can find everything else. And then any social media / Come Reason. So YouTube / Come Reason, Facebook / Come Reason. I'm active on Twitter, Twitter / Come Reason. All, I even have a second life that I grabbed with Come Reason, just in case. You never know.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
that tends to be where you can find me,
Okay.
and
Great.
watch all the stuff, and I'm usually available.
Great. I love it. Appreciate your time a ton. Thanks for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for what you're doing for the kingdom as well. And keep doing it. We need more people like you who are living out their faith. I mean, as a Christian nonprofit, you still have to live out your faith. You still have to be a business owner. You still have to go after it. You still have to work hard. And I just appreciate you. I'm so grateful that you'd spend time today. And yeah, we'll connect soon and look forward to hearing more about your ministry in the future. So thank you.
Sounds great, Jeff. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks a ton. All right. If you want to know more about Kingdom Factor, reach out to me. But thank you again to Lenny for just sharing some wisdom today. Hopefully, this is valuable for you guys. So thank you guys.